Tell me about this report. What should be the number one takeaway people get from this?
Well, there's two parts to the report. First of all, we looked at all the science and how the climate crisis is affecting Michigan, and then boiled it down to the real impacts that we see every day. And then on the hopeful side, what we in Michigan are doing and can do to address it. So we see every day, we're seeing rising water levels, we're seeing extreme weather, too hot, too cold, we're seeing it rain too much, snow too much. We are seeing what happens from that flooding, because you see sewer overflows into the water, then there's more bacteria in the water, and beaches close. We see algae blooms in the Great Lakes because of what's happening with storms, agricultural runoff, and what's happening in sewer overflows. So we're seeing increased mosquito and ticks and disease. We actually have a longer season for asthma now for people, and other kinds of allergies. So we're seeing destruction in homes, and we're seeing all of that happen. So there has to be a sense of urgency about that for us. But the good news is we are number one in clean energy jobs in the Midwest here in Michigan. We are third in the country in new ideas and clean energy patents for metropolitan areas right here in Metro Detroit. We are the leaders in clean transportation, new vehicles, energy efficiency. So what we need to do now, understand the urgency and double down and do more.
And Michiganders might not realize, when you think about it that way, everybody thinks of global warming and climate change worldwide, but it really affects Michigan maybe
no
more
question.
than anyone.
One of the things that really caused me to want to do this report is when I read the fact that we in the Great Lakes region are seeing warming at a faster pace than anywhere else in the country. I think we thought somehow we were going to be okay because we weren't on the coast. And in fact, we have seen every Great Lake increase in temperature, Lake Superior warming the fastest. Every county in Michigan in the last 30 years has increased in its warming. And most importantly, it's what we see every day. I mean, it's the storms that we see every day. It's the runoff, it's the high water levels. And they tell us that the new normal for our Great Lakes is either going to be too high or way too low. It's going to swing. The new normal is swinging in the temperature and swinging in the water levels. And so that we need a sense of urgency, but not hopelessness. And that's really the goal of the report. There are jobs to be created. We can do what we need to do for our quality of life and create jobs at the same time.
What's the response when you get pushback on the science? Because there's still folks out there. We shouldn't overlook, starting with the president is one of those people. So it makes it even tougher when it starts at the top.
The only reason that we don't have the sense of urgency and really having federal policy happen as fast as it should right now is just because we have a White House that is dismissing all the science. And so this shouldn't even be a debate at all. I understand. I mean, we've had 100 years of fossil fuels, oil and gas industry. We've benefited a lot from that, the internal combustion engine. But the reality is 100 years of carbon pollution has created what we are seeing now in terms of the effects on our lives. And I understand that industry wants us to believe it's not happening. It's right in front of our eyes. And so we need to be serious, understand we can move forward and have jobs and a clean economy and breathe the air and have the water levels where we want them to be. But we have to be serious and thoughtful about it and understand we can't just deal with all this political effort going on to stop us by an industry who's very concerned about what they have to lose if we really understand what has happened with carbon pollution.
Impeachment.
Yes.
The way you look at it, is this phone call enough to impeach this president?
Well, what I know is this is incredibly serious, and I'm glad the House is proceeding with an impeachment inquiry. And what's amazing to me is that the White House gave a transcript that lays out what happened. We have a whistleblower who laid out, and it's exactly the same thing the whistleblower said. Then we have the president admitting that, in fact, that he did that. We now have other people from the State Department coming forward talking about how they were pushing back. The ambassador of Ukraine was let go because she didn't want to do what the president wanted her to do. And I think what's important about this is the president has used the United States reputation and our resources and money Congress gave for the Ukraine to protect itself from Russian interference, and he's held that up because they wouldn't work to get dirt on his political opponent. It's abuse of power.
How do you see this playing out when it's all said and done? I know Clinton was a little bit before he got in office, but obviously, and to go back even further with Nixon, those seem to be Stonewall efforts at first. Like you said, he's handing over what would amount to be proof.
Right. I mean, it is. It's right in front of us. I mean, it's really right in front of us. I think the House needs to complete what they're doing, and if they decide to pass an impeachment resolution, then that will come to the Senate, and the Senate is required to act in some fashion. So the majority leader, Senator McConnell, can't just ignore it. So he has a number of choices, but something has to happen. And my hope is it will be a fair trial, and that it will be something that's credible, so that the American people will have confidence that we can do what needs to be done. And ultimately, each of us has to decide country versus party. And I hope people pick standing up for the country.
Do you feel like, because when you're in the job you're always concerned about the voters thing, do Democrats need to be careful how they handle this? Because you look at Adam Schiff, he kind of embellished a little bit as he was starting one of the hearings, and you've got Rashida Tlaib selling T-shirts, or was selling T-shirts, with the language on it that she uses. Do Democrats have to be careful how they walk through this?
Well, from my perspective, this is very serious, and we have to take this seriously and thoughtfully and do the right thing. I mean, to me, this is way beyond politics, way beyond politics. I mean, I've never seen anything like it in terms of someone who's not only turned our norms and ethics upside down, but truly does believe that he can literally do anything, not constrained by the Constitution, not constrained by rule of law, not constrained by what is legal. And that's not okay. Yeah. That's just not okay.
Other quick topic, how concerned are you now that the UAW strike with GM is day 18, I believe, or 19 now? Actually, it might be day 20.
Well, I'm very concerned that they wrap this up, and it's got to be done in a fair way. This is really important. There is important principles that they're fighting for. We've got temporary workers. I've talked to folks who've worked now for 4 years and been categorized as temporary workers, and they have no protection. I talked to a woman who worked for 4 years, only had 3 days off. She was afraid that if she took 1 day off to do something with her children, that she would lose her job. Her health care is less, her wages are less, she has no seniority. That's not fair. And so I hope they resolve this, and it gets resolved in a way that's fair for all the workers.
Yeah, and you were right at the center of everything that happened, and when GM went bankrupt in the bailout and everything.
Right.
Do you feel like they need to appreciate a little bit more what the workers did for them then to get through this now?
Here's what I know. Back when all this was happening, it was very difficult. I was right in the middle of it. The workers were asked to sacrifice in order to be able to make this happen. And we saw starting wages cut in half. We saw the UAW assume all the liability for retiree health care. That's now something that the UAW has in what's called a VEBA, a voluntary employee benefit plan. So they have all the risk of that. I thought at the time that was the right thing to do, because everybody had to do something to be able to make sure that the companies and the jobs could continue. But now there's been success, and I'm so glad of that. I'm very proud of our companies. I'm very proud of the success of General Motors and Ford and Fiat Chrysler and all that has been accomplished. But I think they need to understand that the workers played a role in that.
Michigan State's a 20-point underdog this week.
Oh,
do they have a chance to win?
They always have a chance to win. I went to the game last week, Michigan State and Indiana. What a crazy, crazy game. But they pulled it off. Yeah, we'll see.
Okay. Thanks, Senator.
You're welcome.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.